有的人问我，你为什么不拍中国的黑的一面，中国的不好的一面？你为什么不拍？
I read the New York Times. I've noticed that the coverage on China has become more and more negative.
Most people in the Western world have a lot of misunderstandings about China.
We wanted the international audiences to experience China authentically.
I was talking about people living in the nature and without a special period.
我一起拍中国的正能量的故事。
日本纪录片导演竹内亮在武汉拍摄了一部纪录短片，用10个武汉故事再现了这座英雄城市坚韧豁达的精神面貌。
他在南京和武汉拍摄的纪录片，在中日两国都火了。
月3号登上日本影响力最大的雅虎网站首页
，1天之内播放量就超过1500万次。
还需要有人像竹内亮导演这样去传递真实的情况和真实的情感。
哇，下雨。嗯？早饭。
新年买的。
哦，谢谢。我们穷的节目组没有车，因为纪录片赚不了钱，你也知道，全世界的纪录片的导演都赚不了钱。那最喜欢拍纪录片，这肯定的。我也拍过什么广告啊，还有什么微电影之类的，就没啥意思。我2010年的时候给 NHK 拍长江的纪录片，青海、云南、四川、重庆、湖南、湖北、江西、安徽、江苏、上海，6300公里。那个时候，特别是去内陆的时候，遇到很多不了解日本的人。你是日本人吗？对对对，我是日本人。那个山口百惠现在怎么样？或者高仓健现在怎么样？这个是80年代的明星，早就退了。中国人完全不了解现在的日本，所以我想把现在的日本的文化介绍给中国人。所以开始我住在这里的理由。通过住在日本的中国人的故事来介绍日本的现在的文化。后来决定了，我想去中国，给中国人介绍日本的文化，所以搬到中国，然后开了自己的自媒体公司。我是2002年第一次来中国，当时很流行，去中国旅游。大家都很喜欢中国，在日本电视上天天播放中国旅游的一个广告，不知道吧？也有这样的时代，慢慢，怎么讲？越来越不喜欢中国了。
街が汚そうなイメージ。
可能有一点的没有那么好的印象。餃子のなんか問題がありました。そうちょうど多分その頃で。
やっているもしくはあまりいいと捉えていない人が多いからこそそういうコンテンツを作ろうっていうふうに思われているんじゃないかなと個人的には感じています。
テレビでもそうだし、新聞でもそうだと思うんですけど、そういう傾向は見られるかなと思っています。
归根结底的话，观众想看，所以媒体黑中国。其实日本人也不了解中国，所以开始拍住在中国的日本人的故事。
かっこいいですね。
よしよしよよし。日本人嘛。
はい、ありがとう。おー、谢谢。馴染んでしまってあったかくて気持ちがいいもんだから住み続けてるって感じです。
我去这个公司之前，我都不知道我都不知道南京有一个日本人在做纪录片导演，然后包括何志梦也不知道，是因为那个抗议现场。
皆さんこんにちは。私は中国南京市在住の日本人竹内涼と申します。虽然我们两个人一起来的，但是必须得要离远一点，防护膜。一定要量体温才能够可以上公交车。好。哎，你好。所有人都要。今回南京市の感染防止対策を見て、私は正直驚きました。ここまでやるのかと。在日本最大的网站雅虎上，听说破了他们的记录，所有的日本电视台每天转载这个视频。就好多人问我，因为一个日本人住在南京有没有被欺负？南京虐殺。一次都没有被南京人欺负啊，或被南京人说，哎，我不喜欢日本人，怎么的，你滚出去之类的，一次都没有。虽然是不能忘记历史，我也知道，我也学了很多历史方面的，还是南京人真的很包容。
咱们公司很多人就是我们会经常说 diss 他，只是个假日本人，他并不是一个很正宗日本人的感觉，因为他也是很随意的一个人。
大家好，我们今天来到成都了。なんだよ、分かれないとダメでしょ。就是第一次来中国的时候，已经喜欢上了中国。第一个印象是脏，还有很吵。又脏又吵的地方，为什么喜欢？因为，我进去某一个小卖店，我买水的时候，服务员把零钱扔给我，我第一次遇到了，因为在日本的服务员不可能把零钱扔给我，买水啊，多少钱？3块钱，3块，这干嘛？为什么零钱扔给我？第二天又去了那个小卖店，那个服务员，是不是你是外国人？是的，我是外国人 ，I'm Japanese。简单的英语聊起来了。就第一天他的心情不怎么好吧，所以扔给我。然后第二天他的心情很好，然后跟我聊起来了。但是日本的服务员就像机器人一样，每次都是一样微笑，但是没有人情味，你知道吗？请问这家店关门了是吧？是吧？是，对。虽然长得一样，但是性格什么的都不一样，跟人和人的交流的方式都不一样。有的人问我，你为什么不拍中国的黑的一面，中国的不好的一面？你为什么不拍？因为我不想拍，因为你们都拍了嘛，我没必要拍。我要拍大家都不拍的东西，因为我喜欢中国嘛，我喜欢中国和中国的朋友，我喜欢的东西被不懂的人骂，完全不懂中国的人，那肯定不爽啊。所以我想把我所知道的魅力，中国的魅力或者真实的中国给他们看。
一个区域，我们这个仓库最核心的一个地方。
哇，那什么东西啊？
这就是我们的机器人 ，AGV
无人的仓库吗？
对，是的。
哇，すげえ！
同学，我在工作中，请您让一让我。
不好意思。今日は中国浙江省にあるライブコマース村にやってきました。ここのYeuxという場所はですね、もともと中国の最大の、卸売市場、ついにマラソンが始まりました。すごい、皆さんすごい元気的。因为日本人也比较相信日本人，他们特别保守，他们不相信外国人。但是我是日本人，所以我说了中国是这样子的那样子的话，他们 比较相信。
そうそうそうそうそうそう。そうそうそうそう、あれ俺です。そう見たことあるな。啊，すごい。あれを見るんだ。大凉山ですよ。
大凉山的故事是就拍中国农村的脱贫的故事，但居然我们 YouTube 上所有的视频当中点击量最高的是走进大凉山。这几年开始，中国媒体上一直在报道扶贫、脱贫。因为我11年前去过大凉山，所以我带着疑问、带着怀疑去拍大凉山。我想看真实的脱贫的情况是如何。
我是中国人，我是日本人。日本人。对。是吗？对啊。你们太坏了。我们今天来到了一个悬崖村，听说这边的悬崖很陡的地方的一个上面，就在这儿。
今日はですね、崖の村の人たちがここに移り住んできて何をやってるかを取材しに来ました。
他的记录方式跟中国的纪录片不太一样，就是这种平视的记录。主人公包括事件的这种方式，然后加上他这种旁白，
感觉没有什么事的，但人确实比较少。对，没什么人。哎，终于到了武汉，好久不见。
所以我的纪录片是非常的主观，不是客观的。电视台的纪录片需要客观的，但是我的纪录片是主观的，越主观越接地气，越真实，这是我的想法。这个不是新闻报道的呀，所以没必要那么全面，主要是以主人公的视角为主。他的全面，你说的是那个地方的全面，对，是吧？政府啊，老师啊，什么什么，还不如拍一个人的全面呢。
刚开始的时候上半身，一直在上半身。然后转的时候可以，
导演他一个人做主持人做导演，
然后一直在远，
那种沉浸式的像 vlog 式的那种拍这种纪录片，人又很少，这个团队看上去不那么专业，就是看上去。后来发现其实拍这样的东西，设备啊这些东西其实是次要的。
我们最主要是随机性，今天拍什么我们也不知道。到时候再说吧。粉丝们特别愿意配合我们拍摄，我们想拍武汉人，好多人报名了。
南京，
我胖了大概15公斤以上
啊！没想到那么
热闹。
对，热闹。你觉得会恢复吗？原来的样子？会吗？
会，但是需要时间。
所以我们跟粉丝一起做纪录片的感觉。
谢谢大家今天从大老远过来，没有时间。来，3、2、1。可以吗？
刚来中国的时候，住在中国的理由是希望通过我，中国人也知道原来有这样的日本人。
中岛，
他是外国人。
他是他好像是马来西亚。
或者通过我，很多日本人知道啊，原来中国是这样的。但现在的话，不仅是那个，所以我的朋友、同事、家人、粉丝，跟我有关的所有的人，是我住在中国的理由。
When I was researching the history of jazz in Shanghai in the 1930s, it was very hard to find actual film footage or audio or even photographs of the actual clubs, the scenes, the people, the places. And I thought to myself, well, I would like to give a gift to future historians. I want to make a film so that future historians can look back and say, oh, we have an archive of all of this stuff. I guess now is time for any kind of questions, comments. Of course, Lin Dongfu, the brave pioneer who first brought jazz back to this city.
费教授出现在我面前的时候，就是一个很中肯的、很低调的，我还应该说他是很儒雅的一个男人。当然，他是个美国人。有的时候你就觉得人跟人碰在一起，这个状态对了，眼睛对视，就你已经忘了他是个外国人，你不会去想这些，就是一个可以交谈的男人，他会倾听，然后他问你所有的问题，关于音乐，关于爵士，关于这个城市。
好。Shanghai is a very rich and fascinating culture. It's not as ancient as Xi'an, it's not as illustrious as Beijing, or even Suzhou or Hangzhou, which were all ancient capitals. But Shanghai was a very lively trading port. So I think when you become interested in how cultures connect and how cultures come together, you look at the port cities. Actually, the China that I experienced in the 1980s was modernizing and growing and developing and absorbing a lot of Western culture. So I became interested in that, in what happens when China meets the West, what happens to Chinese culture, and then how do Chinese people take in the cultures of the West. So music was a good example, because music is universal and everybody loves music. And so I became interested in the scenes. So it's again related to my work looking at the interface between China and the outside world, that these music scenes are a way for China to engage with the outside world. Most people in the Western world have a lot of misunderstandings about China. And I really do think that you have to spend a lot of time here to get to know the country. You can't just watch a film or read the newspapers. You really have to be here. You have to be in the xianchang. I really believe about xianchang is so important. Unless you experience life here, it's impossible to understand what life is like in this country.
我觉得需要一点像费教授这样的一个外国人，他深深地了解中国，我应该说他喜欢中国，他在这里有那么多的朋友。然后他要表达我所喜欢的一个地方和我所喜欢的人。
This is my home studio. It's a multi-purpose studio, and I use it to edit my documentary films. So I've been working here in this studio with this computer, editing my film on jazz in Shanghai. This is a microphone, as you see, so I can record my narration. But I'm also using this room as a music studio. So I have my musical instruments, and sometimes when I get tired of doing my work, I will take a break and play some music. I've been living here for maybe 20 years. A good chunk of my life I've spent living in China. And even then, I still feel like there's so much that I don't know about this country. I think everybody who's really serious about China comes here at least now and then to spend some time here in China. I don't think you can understand China without being here. Family is so important in Chinese culture. It's the most important thing. Family first. So I think everything about Chinese culture kind of starts with the family. So the jia, nothing more important in Chinese culture than the jia. It's the number one unit. That's why the nation is called a guojia. So I think it's going to be a while before China can really absorb foreigners and make them a part of this society. It's going to take some time.
This documentary will take you back into the darkest chapter of Shanghai's
During this 3-day period, just what happened in the city of Nanjing? I've had the honor of participating in some documentary film series here in China. China wants to get its stories out into the world, and these are stories that are worth telling. My first experience with making a documentary film in China with a professional Chinese TV crew was in Shanghai in 2015. I was invited to host a documentary about the wartime period when Shanghai was occupied by the Japanese. The story involved a few foreigners who were living in Shanghai at the time and the struggles that they went through during this period of war.
Over this river,
we went all over Shanghai and we filmed in different locations that were relevant to the story. And it was a great experience. And I think we produced a really wonderful film as a result. Then in 2018, I was invited by Jiangsu TV to host a documentary series, a story about the Nanjing massacre and about several foreigners who had stayed in Nanjing end of 1937 in order to help the Chinese people during the height of the Nanjing massacre in December 1937. These people included doctors, there were businessmen, there were missionaries, there were educators. We told 6 stories of 6 different foreigners who had come to the aid of the Chinese people during this time of crisis. So even though it's a very terrible, tragic story, it was also uplifting in its way because it showed how people can help each other even in the worst of times, and how even the worst of times can bring out the best in us. My most recent experience was, again, with the Shanghai TV crew, documentaries about stories about 1949 and what happened when the People's Liberation Army marched into Shanghai and liberated the city. So again, this is a wartime story, but it was also a story about foreigners who were living in Shanghai at the time and what they witnessed and what they later reported on about the liberation period and when the PLA took power over the city. While working on these documentary productions here in China, I've learned a great deal about the art and the science of producing documentary films. It's been a great learning experience. China wants to get its stories out into the world, and these are stories that are worth telling. And I've had a great experience working with TV production companies and crews here in China to produce these stories. I'm working at this university Duke in Kunshan, we're all committed to living here and every day working with Chinese people, teaching Chinese students, and learning from China.
Do you know the 4 famous department stores in Shanghai?
Like the Dongfeng Minzu.
The 4 famous 百货公司.
新世界, the New World.
新世界 was different. That was like an amusement center. 第一百货, that was called 大新公司. And then down here you had Xinxin and Yong'an, and then Xianshi, Sinceres. Those were the 4 department stores. Do you know who, the people who founded those department stores, where did they come from?
China.
Where in China?
Maybe Guangdong, I guess.
Yes. They went to Sydney, Australia, where they saw how a modern department store worked, and they brought that back to China.
Now, of course, it's a little easier now because everybody makes videos, but then how many of those videos actually get archived? So I think I'm hoping that these films will be a testimonial to these scenes that were happening when I was living in China, when everything was changing so rapidly and China and the world were interacting in such a deep and meaningful way. So I think it's like a time capsule, a gift to the future, that people might want to look at these films 100 years from now and say, oh, wow, that's what Shanghai was like back then, or that's what Beijing. So I think there's something, again, it's very powerful about the xianchang, being in a music club and being overpowered by the music and the rhythm and all the people dancing and having fun and, you know, enjoying themselves. I think engaging with China, coming here, living here, and learning the language, learning the Chinese language are all very, very important to understanding this country.